Hi, and welcome to the Future of Work podcast with Joan, where we discuss interesting topics on how we'll work in the future. Today, we're excited to have Brian Weinberger with us, a highly accomplished executive with over 20 years of experience driving revenue and building high-performance teams. Brian is currently holding a chief revenue position at Hisense, where he is focused on scaling revenue. Prior to that, he held leadership positions in companies like Salesforce, Cube, and Yext. Brian's deep expertise in sales, strategy, business development, and revenue optimization makes him a standout leader in tech. We're looking forward to hearing your perspective, Brian, on fostering teams and navigating the future of work. This was a very wordy intro, Brian. Welcome.
Thank
Would you
you.
like to add something to this?
Let's go. I'm excited to be here. I've been passionate about sales and revenue and customers for 30 years now. And spent majority of my career, 20 years, I guess, or so in CRM. So definitely love building relationships, connected to process, and extremely competitive, of course. But yeah, no, I'm excited to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Plus, you're a basketball fan, right?
I'm a pretty big basketball fan. I'm a pretty big sports fan in general, but yeah, basketball is life for me. Yeah.
So, that's great. And we'll see how the sports analogies connect to what we're talking about today. Okay. You know, when we did the prep for this podcast, you talked a lot about how the office is similar to being on the basketball court, right? It's you said like it's about the energy, the team spirit, and kind of that sense of working together toward the win. Like that can really only happen face to face. That was kind of the gist of what. Can you a bit elaborate for
Yeah.
those that weren't present there, right? How do you view this analogy?
Yeah. I do think a lot about sports as it relates to like go-to-market teams. You're playing to win. It's a competition, and there's a lot of coaching involved. And so if you think of like the natural coaching element of basketball,
Mm-hmm.
like there's no one-on-ones. Like you don't have like, hey, Tuesday I'm going to have a one-on-one with my point guard. Wednesday I have a one-on-one with my power forward. It just doesn't. You don't really operate that way. You're really coaching in real time. So you see something, you say something, and certainly with where the world is with working today, it's more challenging. So when I started out my career, I was in the office every day. And there was a lot of people. Like we were kind of all operating the same motion. We were all salespeople, and literally, like you would be on the phone, and your manager or coach would walk by, right, and just give you real time feedback. And it's super powerful because you don't have to like wait for this sort of video one on one or this video performance review. You get it instantly, and also you're surrounded by other players on the team. So you're kind of through osmosis, you're hearing, oh, wow, that was a great way to position our product. Or, oh, I love how they answered that question. You're basically always learning all the time. So it's not impossible where we are with video and this hybrid and this remote office. It's not impossible. I think it starts with being aware that it's just different. But certainly, yeah, I thrive off being in person. In fact, I'll just admit, like conversations through video, yes, I've gotten used to it, but I think I personally would rather be in person in an office for every meeting I have. There's some element of anxiety with the glass, and maybe I'm just more of a warm and feeling type of person. Like I kind of thrive off like the, sort of the energy of being in person.
Mm, mm. I think I totally get where you're coming from or what you're saying. Um, it's for sure it's different, right? And all of this changed a while back. I guess we were forced into this. Otherwise, I guess a lot of things wouldn't change. But from some perspective, world changed, right? It's different as it was, and I mean to kind of start with like a trick question. Do you think that it's even possible to return to how it was?
It's an interesting question. I think some industries have already gotten back. I don't think they'll ever fully be back
Mm,
7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in an
mm,
office, which is what it was pre-pandemic. I think certain industries, like I know financial services in the big cities like New
mm,
York and throughout the world, they were really adamant about being in the office. Um, and so a lot of the technology they leverage at a financial firm requires being in the office. They have different phone systems, technology they use that like it's hard to duplicate it at home. But I still think even that industry has relaxed a little bit. Like it's probably a 4-day work week in terms of in the office and probably
mm,
one at home. In the tech industry, I mean, we've been leading the world with tech, with different tech,
mm,
video calls, smartphones. We're on the road all the time anyway. I mean, even when we were in office culture, I was out and about visiting prospects and clients.
mm,
So we're sort of familiar with being mobile. So I don't see tech ever being like a 5-day in the office culture. But I do like the idea of a hybrid, and I'm not sure any company really has mastered it yet or knows exactly what that is. I do know in being outside of New York City, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is essentially like when a lot of people are
mm,
commuting to the office, Monday, Friday, typically home office. So, that's sort of the normal standard operating procedures.
mm,
Um, I mean, I'm kind of good with that, to be honest.
mhm.
I think 17 years I commuted. So anybody who lives outside of city, I'm literally 29 miles from Midtown New York City.
Yeah,
How long
one
do you
hell of
think
a
that
commute, huh?
takes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like hours and hours if you combine everything together, probably.
it's yeah, one way is 1 hour 20, and that's on a good day. And you're talking about almost 3 hours of commuting.
Mm,
I will say what's good about it is the tech now today, you can kind of work on both sides.
mm,
So that's good and bad, I guess. But I remember like vividly when the day was over, like I could have like barreled over 50 people just to get to my bus or train,
mm,
just to get home. Like that mad rush to get home so you can see your family was pretty stressful. So I think there's some good of this hybrid world.
mm, mm. I mean, just to kind of underline what you're saying, we see through our current customer base, it's like nobody really figured this out. So that's for sure. And we see like everybody in the world is struggling, figuring out what's the right policy. There's always trade-offs, like you said. You know, should we do it fully remote? Should we do 3 days in office? Should we enforce this? Should we do 5 days in the office? What days? There's so many questions, and everybody's kind of trying to figure this out. And I fully agree with what you're saying, right? Um, so it seems like your point is that part of the business or a part of how you like to work or how you think teams should work is that this energy being in the same room, connecting directly with people, talking to people on the spot, is super important to you, right? Would you say that? I mean, how do you view like kind of this then approaches that, for instance, Amazon did, saying, okay, everybody needs to be needs to return to the office. We need to start working. What's your personal take on this? What do you think is a good thing to enforce, if anything at all?
Yeah, I think it starts with higher level, right? Start with like, what's the goals? What's the objectives?
Mm,
What's the business in terms of like departments, people? How do people like to work? So you start high
mm,
level and you work your way to a really good policy. I mean, one thing that's been consistent in work is just different policies,
mm,
and there are many of them, right? Like, I think so. Putting together a well-crafted policy that a lot of people have bought in,
mm,
executives, leaders throughout the company, and then obviously communicating that really well and sticking to it throughout the company. But I mean, I have, I have children who are going to be out in the workforce very soon,
mm, mm,
and there is not a doubt in my mind that I know it's scary that I'm going to have children
mm,
commuting to the city with me. But basically, there's not a doubt in my mind that enablement, like learning your skills of your job, is
mm,
much easier and more effective when you're in person. Um,
mm,
yes, of course, there's a lot of online learning and courses you can learn and read and all that. But on the job, in the office, with people around you, you absorb it faster. You accelerate that enablement. So I think that companies are going to have to, when they think about their goals and objectives
mm,
and the teams and who these people are and how they learn, they need to think about being in the office for that group.
mm,
I'll give you examples. I mean, I know in working in tech, engineers, developers, they tend to work with on their own, independent, headphones on,
yeah, yeah.
dark room, people away. You know, what's interesting is before the pandemic, I worked for a company, Yext, tech
Mm,
company. Yext designed this unbelievable office, probably one of the nicest
mm,
offices I've ever been a part of. And one of the things they designed was like rooms for developers because it was an
mm,
in the office culture.
mm,
So they had like, darker rooms, like soundproof rooms. They knew
mm,
people were going to be
mm,
on headphones working independently. If you think about it, remote work for developers or engineers actually makes sense.
mm.
It's how they work today. Now, I also know they want human touch too. So you have to figure out, you know, theirs is probably not as much as like the go-to-market side.
Mm,
On the flip side, like go-to-market teams, I mean, if you are entry level at a
mm.
tech company, you're in business development
Yeah,
or
yeah.
you're a customer success manager,
Mm,
you are going to thrive being in the office. You're going to learn faster. I
mm,
believe you're going to probably accelerate your career path.
mm,
Um, I I find it interesting because I deal with a lot of young professionals
mm,
who are remote, like remote in terms of like not just remote like a suburb of a city, they're
mm.
remote of not even a big city. Like
Yeah,
they've
yeah.
moved so far away and they still want to rise the ranks. They
Yeah,
still
yeah.
ask me for promotions. They
Yeah,
still want to run teams. I find it pretty challenging because I would like leaders and managers like
yeah.
at
Mhm.
least near the headquarters or near an
Mm.
office. So I think that's going to be interesting over the next 10 to 20 years on how people get promoted and what that looks like.
So, you know, you started this kind of the explanation with your kids, right? You said,
Yeah.
it's you find it. What did you say? You find it danger? No, you find it interesting that sooner or later you're gonna be commuting with your kids, right? And have you ever thought about? the difference between the generations, right? It's like one thing is leveling up young professionals, and you come from a different world, or we come from a different world than than the world of young, let's say, current young professionals or people on their way to become young professionals, right? Like, do you see that, given the fact that they're growing up with all of this technology, that this perhaps makes it different or even easier for them to leverage this to get, this personal connection? Or do you think that it's like a universal truth that if you want to do this correctly, or if you want to have this proper learning experience, growth experience that you get from an office, there's simply no other way than, like, you need to be at least near the office, and you can't, joke around with being remote. It's like, it's fine, but it's like a convenience that might be convenient for your life, but not especially good for your career.
I mean, it's simple for me. So I had two children, two daughters that were in high school during COVID.
Mm.
Anybody who had children, I'm talking
Oh
about children
man.
that are in school,
Oh man,
elementary or higher.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, my wife is a teacher. Okay. So basically, I'm in the office working, and I have three
Mm,
people upstairs. One is teaching
mm,
through video, and the other two are taking classes through video.
mm,
It was one of the most um, ineffective
mm,
times in U.S. schooling because
for sure.
kids did not learn as much. They were there. There was a lot of there was a lot of sort of mental health issues going on, just
Mm,
because you didn't have the human touch, you didn't have that
mm,
energy,
mm,
um, you didn't have the relationship building. And my
mm,
wife will tell you she teaches elementary level, and I mean, how is a 7-year old to a 12-year old going to learn through this? Like, there's just
mm,
so many distractions.
mm, mm.
So if we look to that, and typically tech and the business world looks to consumer, the consumer
Mm,
side. And if you look to that, it's not good to be all remote all the time.
yeah.
You're not gonna build a great company that way.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I understand your point, and I see where you're coming from. And I guess,
Do you agree?
I mean, I'll be a bit more extreme. That why my actual viewpoint is, just in order to kind of have a bit of more debate. I actually believe that it's really about generations and what technology was available at a certain point in time. And I understand that, as we're building companies, we imbue them with our own culture. It's the culture of leaders that kind of build out the organizations, and we need to accept that a culture defines what works in the company as well, right? And I'm not saying that current crop of the companies with the leaders that they have today are able to adapt to this, but what I strongly believe is that new generations of companies that come up from a totally different backgrounds, with all this AI tooling and videos and Discords and Twitches and streaming and whatnot, the population is changing. I mean, people are adapting, are changing their ways, and this will have a profound effect of what's possible and what's not possible, what works, what doesn't work. I'm not saying what's good or bad. And
Yeah.
for sure, an industry, especially, I mean, you said it yourself, right? It's like in sports. If everybody's playing basketball, then we should do what's good for basketball. But if you're starting to play like six-dimensional chess, then probably the coaching staff or the coaching procedure, how you level up your game is going to be different as well. And that's kind of my take on this.
That's awesome. So let's go back to basketball. Okay. Go to market teams. Go to market in
Yeah,
I don't care what industry, but like you're on the front line. You're selling, you're marketing, you're servicing.
yeah,
It is extremely process driven.
agree.
One of the unique differentiators of companies is sort of how they actually go to market, how they
Mm,
play,
mm,
what their process is, how are they
mm,
unique, how are they differentiating. If I go to basketball, I mean, basketball is been played the same way hundreds of years.
yeah.
There are teams that thrive. Like I am in love with uh, Danny Hurley. He's the coach of UConn, Connecticut.
Mm,
Okay, they've won back-to-back national championships.
mm,
He actually is playing a different game. His process is different than any other team in the world.
mm,
He's watched more film. He's taken from different sports, not just basketball, and essentially has this like you know basketball 3.0. It's like a new way of playing. Okay,
mm,
he would never have been able to get a team to do that new offense, that new process, without
mm,
being in practice in person.
mm,
So if we move over to go to market, every company is trying to get an edge. They're trying to
mm.
compete. They're trying to differentiate. There's so many, like, think about every category. There's just so many
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's a
companies. So
cutthroat business, right? Everybody's
yes,
fighting.
exactly. So in my mind, that's why the hybrid could work. So handful of days, let's say 2 to 3 days in the office, you're practicing, you're learning the process. And then those 2 days you're not in the office, you're playing, but you
Mm,
you you at least were in person to learn as
mm,
much as you can. So I think that's how I see the hybrid model working.
mm. I mean, I fully agree with you. I just want to kind of add this. My view on this is that
Please.
if we take your basketball analogy, right, and I fully agree. If you got somebody who's playing basketball and he's using the same ball, it's the same court, but it's a team and they need to interact and work one another. But what if we bring in people that instead of playing basketball, it's a bit different sport, and they use all of these new modern tools to not to communicate less, but to communicate more, to communicate in a different way. So the flow of the information is even more real time. Like there's a bunch of these tools that people are, I mean, I have a hard time adapting to, right? But there's a bunch of young people that are growing up with knowing just that never even, remember the phones, like everybody was ringing. Now, young guys don't even know how an old style phone looked like, right? What is it? It's this. I totally get what you're saying, but perhaps it's going to be totally different. Like
Yeah, I'm not. I don't want to come off as like this old-fashioned person. I have
I know.
embraced. Yeah, I have embraced. I love innovation. I love tech. I love the fact that. I
Mm,
love the fact that. By the way, if I go in the office, I get in by 9. Let's say.
mm,
Like again, back in the day, it was you were in the office by 7. Why? I don't know. Because everybody was.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Doesn't mean it was right. So 9, I could leave at 3 and I still have my smartphone, my laptop. I have texting
Mm,
and all types of communication tools. I'm always on. I mean, in some
yeah,
ways, the hybrid, we're always on Saturdays,
yeah.
Sundays, etc. Yeah.
And it's a good question. What's better, right? And what's better for our health? Or, I mean, it's just different, and we probably need to figure out how we're going to cope with all of this. So I don't think that we're old school or that you're old school. I think it's finding what works for your culture, what you like, what you prefer, and how you build out really good leaders, right? And you've
Yeah.
been doing this for a while now. I mean, for a very long time, very successfully. So it's, I mean, it obviously works, right? So that kind of brings me to the next topic, which is,
Yes.
at SciSense, you work at on business intelligence, you work at tools for analytics, right? And this kind of relates to analytics in the workplace. Here at Joan, we're building solutions that kind of help leaders understand what's going on in their workplace. Is that kind of office attendance, where people are sitting, how are they working? It's even like tracking air quality. I don't know. So a really rich analytical view of your office. And you guys, you support that with your solutions, helping people and companies understand all of that, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, here you can view the analytics tools as a carrot or as a stick, right? You can view it as like you can say, okay, we're gonna enforce a policy, and if somebody doesn't adhere, we're gonna do something about it. Or we can say, hey, we see what's going on in the office. This is not good for our culture. We're gonna try out different policies and see if the underlying analytics change. So it's literally trying to change something on the policy side and seeing what happens versus, okay, this is the policy. If you don't do that, you're out. And what's your take on this spectrum? Where do you stand, or what do you think is the best approach?
Okay. Can I actually draw some parallel
Sure.
between the
Be my guest.
analytics sort of evolution and what we were talking about before, which is like in-office culture to, remote only to hybrid,
Mm,
right? Okay. So think of those three things: in the office, remote only, and then hybrid. So
mm,
analytics has been interesting. It's been part of my entire 30 years, right? My journey. Um, I'll tie the first thing to like in the office. It was all manual analytics. It was all
mm,
sort of cobbling together data and reports based on, like you said, based on a policy or based on
mm,
someone's thought or based on a customer's request. And so you had a lot of people in companies just like scrambling to put together some custom report in a manual fashion and delivering it. That to
mm.
me was like the in the office days.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we move into sort of this a little bit of it's not exactly parallel to the remote only, but basically the evolution of dashboards and
Mm,
reports,
mm,
which is like what I refer to as like traditional BI,
mm,
business intelligence. Like, so think about every product you've ever used on the navigation bar, whether it was in the cloud or not in the cloud, you would have reports
yeah,
and dashboards. And,
yeah.
of course, you would navigate over there. So instead of these manual cobbling together
Mm,
reports, they actually brought it into the product itself.
mm,
So that's like traditional BI. You would go there. You didn't really, you had to kind of learn how those reports worked versus them learning how you work.
mm,
So you were basically at the mercy of however they design these reports and dashboards.
mm,
Fast forward to like this world we're in now,
mm,
which if you look at the consumer market, there's insight everywhere. Like
mm.
I was thinking about this leading up to this call. Like I could be watching a show on, I'll plug Amazon. You talked about Amazon
Yeah.
before. I could be watching a show on Prime
Mm,
and you're watching a scene below at the bottom. It's bringing insight. It tells me who the actress or actor is.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
tells me like it could tell me what other films they were in, what other shows they were in, right to the screen where I am.
Mm,
Or I'm sure you're like me and you sit around and you watch something and you're like, you ask Google a question and you
yeah,
say, hey, I'm not going to say the name because I have one of those in this room,
yeah,
so don't
yeah, yeah.
talk. But Basically, you ask a question and it gives you an answer back. Think about that.
Mm,
Like instead of me going to a report or dashboard, it brings it right to me.
mm,
That's where analytics is today. Like literally, let's bring the insight into my everyday process, or like as I hover over record, give me more information. Like, so I think for what you're trying to do is you're trying to bring, um, you're helping bring this consumer world into this office culture,
mm,
like almost in giving them the carrot. So
mm,
instead of saying like you attended 5 times out of 15, you're basically saying, hey, when you come to the office, we know you're interested in what the weather is. So, like, potentially we'll give you that in the next few days, like,
mm,
so that you know what to wear to the office. Or,
mm,
I know like people are bringing in like schedules for public transportation. And that's like a nice way to say, like, hey, we got you when you're in the office, or
mm,
hey, it's someone's birthday or someone's
mm,
anniversary at the company, or hey, we're going to serve you lunch today and here's the menu.
mm,
um, or hey, here is the dioxide level in the office, which you'll be more productive. Like you're basically bringing value and insight everywhere so that people don't have to sort of go on their own in that manual way, or the
mm.
second way, right? Go to a report or dashboard to find the information. You're kind of bringing it to them. So that's super powerful.
And I guess it's all about motivation, right? It's you said it like you said, right? If you highlight why people should be in the office or what's good about being in the office, they're more likely to come to the office and kind of feel good about working there, right? It's not just kind of pushing for a policy. From what I'm hearing is it's not like the old school way. Okay, it's 3 days and no wiggle room and this it's more about, okay, let's try to get people to the office 3 days a week. Perhaps we're going to enforce something, but generally speaking, we really need to look at, are people happy when they come to the office, and what policies or what tools or what can we offer to them to get them to the office, right? So it's
Yeah,
um
we I mean, one simple way, this is not like that cutting edge or using
yeah.
analytics, but one way is, um, there are people that, there are people that give you energy, and there are
Mm,
people that take energy away. That'll not
mm,
change in our lifetime. But
sure.
the people that give energy, when they, it's a simple, like, text message to the company, hey, I'm going to be in the office next week, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you, if you're an energy giver, people will rally around that and they want to come in.
Mm,
So it's thinking of things like that. What are those energy givers? I know, a lot of companies offer lunch for those days. And it sounds like, what you all are doing is providing just a better experience for
mm,
in office.
mm,
That's what we need to be thinking about versus
mm.
why aren't you there? But like, hey, how can we keep you here? It's just a
Yeah.
different mindset.
And I think this is the key change that I the key realization now post COVID or whatever, post this huge change in the work, right? Is that as managers we figured out, okay, workforce is also changing. They really like working remote, but it's also important for people to come in the office to have this proper experience in the office. And then, okay, instead of kind of forcing everybody to do the same and alienating them, let's think about what's the value for them and how can we make them come to the office and enjoy the office and all the benefits that it brings. Because I fully agree with you. It's not, being in the office has tangible benefits for sure.
Yes.
Uh, it's different for people. For different people, it's different for different people. But being present, exchanging ideas, just building culture, I mean, that pays for sure dividends, right? Um, so, I mean, there's a nice question here that we can go from here. We're talking so much about policies, right? And here right now we're mostly talking about in office, not in office, hybrid, how do you work, stuff like that, motivating. But there's also a whole host of, let's call them utopian work policies, right? And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's like, perhaps unlimited vacations, remote first, 4-day work weeks, like stuff you would hear from Europe, right? So, I mean, I get you as a really results driven guy who really cares, about what's happening there. How do you reconcile these two things? How do you view all of this that's happening on the policy side? Because there's lots of innovation going on there, but at the same time, this businesses thrive on results, right? How does this connect? What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, this has been pretty consistent, I think. I mean, people that want to perform at a high level, they, everybody wants balance. We all want balance. We want good work-life balance. Um, the reality is that work, in some ways, this is my perspective, work
Sure.
kind of work funds your personal life. So I don't think you'll ever have this complete balance if you really want to, grow in your career. So what I'm saying is there are vacations that aren't full vacations. I mean, so,
Mm,
and especially with all the technology today, like for me, I do go away. Of course, I want to get away
mm,
and go on vacation like everyone. But typically, I'll spend like early mornings or late in the evening making sure I'm caught up because I never want to come back to the office, whether
mm,
it's my home office or the real office, with like a pile of tasks. So I want to be in the know, and I want to stay ahead. So
mm,
it's it's sad to say this out loud, right? What I just said, but like it just, but it's the truth. I mean, when you're in go to market, it's part of the beauty of being in go to market is that you have a lot of flexibility, but also you are accountable. So you have to
mm,
find a way to be able to do both. And you also have to, I think you have to be upfront about it. So like if I'm going
mm,
to shut down when I'm out of the office, I will let everybody know. Uh,
mm,
up, up the chain, across the chain, down the chain, meaning like my boss, my
mm,
peers, people who work for me. Hey, look, I'm out of pocket the next 3 days. I am not even checking, I'm not
mm,
checking anything. If you do need me, call me or text me if it's
mm,
urgent. But like you sort of, in my opinion, that's another thing that I want the younger generation to be able to do is, like you said, remember they hide behind text and
mm,
messaging. Hey, pick up the phone, ask permission to go away. Those are things that are really healthy and also be upfront. Like, hey, I'm going to be in some remote place. I'm not connected.
mm,
I wrote up everything for so and so to do and handle for me. Because actually, you just reminded me, that's a lost art. When we used to go away, like you actually wrote up a document and you
mm,
gave it to a peer and said, here's everything that could happen in my world.
mm.
My out of the office is Luka, and Luka, you got my back.
Yeah, yeah.
What I find now is people go away because they have tech connected. They think
Mm,
like, no big deal. Like I'll still stay connected, but they
yeah,
but
yeah.
they don't. So we have to be upfront about what we're about to do. I know when
Mm,
I go away, I either go away and I shut down and I tell everybody, or like I said, mornings and night I get my stuff done. I mean, and
Mm,
that's because I want to go away again.
yeah.
My mindset is if I perform at a high level, I can probably go away again.
Mm, mm. I mean, I totally get your point, and I think it's when we think about kind of these modern policies, and I'll just talk about the hot potato, let's say, like the hot ember, like 4 day work week, right?
Yeah.
It's we started testing that, and when we started, it's it's if you look at it from a perspective of, okay, we're gonna work just 4 days a week and we're gonna work one day less. It's like it's strange, right? Can that really work or not? And as we were kind of going through all of this, the experiment, we kind of figured out it's not about the do you work 4 days, 3 days, one days a week, but it's about giving people the space to do their best work whenever they want to. So it's kind of looking at the performance, ensuring that the performance is there. And this could be, how they're developing, how they're bringing in revenue, how they're closing tickets in the development, how they're servicing support tickets. I don't care, right? But at the same time, we need to give them the benefit of trust, saying, okay, guys, if you're really performing really well, you can optimize your time to the best extent possible, right? We're just gonna look at what are you achieving, right? And instead of kind of being present in the office just for the sake of being present in the office, let's really look at, okay, what have you achieved? Have you done all of that? So it's a really really loaded term, and for better or worse, like there's a part of I guess in the people in the industry, we understand like there's no 4 day work week without performance, right? You can't you need performance. Others, if you're not as good performing as good as the other company that doesn't have that policy, then it cannot work, right?
Yeah.
uh from the other perspective, right, um if you can get to that point, right, if you can get kind of this set of policies that give you this, let's say, flexibility and give you this trust, that all that matters is kind of you need to do the best job possible. um, I think that's insanely powerful, right? um, because it's I see this, there's a huge clash, this old school, new school, woke, anti-woke, like there's like, everybody's fighting, whereas we should really be looking at, okay, what's the performance, you know
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Can I speak to this?
yeah, sure.
Um,
Please do.
Lots of thoughts. I mean, look, I will tell you that so at SciSense,
Yeah.
we had we had like some vote throughout the company of different things we can do,
Mm-hmm.
as like to help the culture and employees. And what ended up winning was Summer Fridays. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in the eastern part of the United States,
Yeah.
the summer is a special time because you got more daylight. There's, we don't have the best weather all year round, but during the summer, it's amazing. You can go, there's so many places to go and visit, beaches, etc. So everybody will tell you, I had a boss from California who spent a couple years in New York and said the summer in New York is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So Summer Fridays wins the vote. I had a lot of people message me like, "Oh, you must be so upset that Summer Fridays, was voted on."
What was Summer Fridays? What was the policy? What one?
Okay. So basically during the summer months, so from Memorial Day to Labor Day,
Okay, yeah.
so May to September, uh, every other Friday is completely off for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and every other Friday you work till 2 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So we basically had a shortened Friday and a Friday off every other week.
Sounds very progressive.
Yes, and people were like, "Oh, Brian, like, like you've been describing me, like, oh,
Yeah.
you're performance driven, you've been around for a while." I was like, actually, I'm really excited about it because I didn't vote for it, but I love that it won. And the person who voted for it, I think, like everybody was like praising this person. They were so happy. But we can't do that all year round. And
Sure.
here's why. It's not just performance. It is performance. So if you're in a business that, anyway, customers are at the center of everything,
Sure.
then how can you not service a customer 7 days a week, right?
Sure.
So when you have a policy of a 4-day work week, it's scary because you're kind of telling people like, hey, customer request comes in on a certain day, like, oh, we're not open,
Yeah,
so we're
yeah,
not
yeah.
going to handle it. But so you
That
can't do
doesn't
that.
work.
Doesn't work. The other piece is if you're in like a professional services company where your revenue stream is billable hours, if you shut down and go 4 days, you're basically losing a massive amount of revenue.
Mm.
So there's those implications. I think
Mm.
what I think would be interesting is no video calls on Fridays. I mean, that is powerful.
Mm.
Basically, you're telling people like, hey, get your work done that day, like mindfulness, meditation, and get grounded. However, go to market is not going to be able to do that because we got to talk to customers.
Yeah, sure. Uh,
So,
uh,
last thing I was going to say is you could do like I think if you do it well, depending on the size company you have, but you should have shifts. You could say
yeah, yeah.
like, yeah, hey, half the group will take this day, half the group takes another day. But anyway, I'll
So,
stop there
so
because it sounds like you have something to say.
this is exactly what was my point. If you look at it, from this theoretical approach, like every Friday is going to be off, that doesn't work. Like 100% agreed. You can have like this temporary policy, but we're a global business. We need to operate 24/7. You need to figure it's still performance, right? And you need to work. Um, so for us, right? We don't take. There's no day that the office is closed. We work 20. We cover the whole world with our support. I mean, this needs
Yes.
to run, but still, right? People have this ability to adapt their work schedule. Or they say, okay, this week I'm gonna work 4 days from Monday to Thursday. And I'm gonna really push it, and then I'm gonna take the Friday off, and then somebody is gonna say, okay, cool. I have something on Wednesday. I need to pick up my kids, and I'm not even gonna bother you. I'll work the rest, and it's kind of this. And in the end, it's really a question in which case do people do more work, right? Because you kind of give them the ability to do their work when they can, right?
I love how you describe that. The question for the world is, do you appreciate that if you never worked in the office five
Yeah,
days a
yeah, yeah,
week?
yeah, 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 yeah.
That is an interesting question because for me, uh, going to watch my daughter play basketball at 4 o'clock was a gift. If I was in the office 5 days a week and my child played high school basketball, it would have been really challenging for me to see
Mm,
her play. So it's a huge gift. Or, like you said, I have a doctor's appointment.
mm.
I was wondering how we saw doctors working in the office 5 days a week. I guess everything was on a Saturday. Um, but, like, you should be able to see
Yeah, yeah.
doctors. It's obviously, I try to get like an 8 a.m. doctor's appointment. Um, this is going to sound silly. Haircut.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember like working in New York City. I would get a haircut in the city, but like, so it was a little easier. but like people want to go to see their person near their home. Like, so yeah, let them do that. But like you said, they end up probably working at different times that they may not have worked if they worked in the office. So there's definitely some amazing advantages. I guess the rhetorical question is, if you never worked 5 days a week in the office, do you really appreciate like that? Hey, go do what you need to do for your personal life
Mm,
and check back in later. But
mm,
I'll wrap it up here. I'll tie it up here. You said performance. At the end of the day, if you are a performance culture and you lead with metrics and you manage with that, then it doesn't really matter sort of what you're doing and where you are, because if you're not performing, it's obvious. And if you are performing, it's obvious.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that is how you sort of have to, I guess, deal with whatever hybrid, office, remote, whatever culture you decide to have.
yeah. And I really like this as the end point. I think it really ties everything together. It's understanding how your business works, understanding the metrics, understanding important for you, and everything else will resolve if we're flexible enough, right?
Yes.
And I do believe that in the end, only time will tell if the new generations will even understand how we worked before and what's better or worse. But I guess we'll just need to wait and see, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I just get reminded again of basketball. Like,
Perfect, perfect.
can you imagine, let's say I'm the coach, you're on the team, and I said, Luka, we have practice Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock.
Mm,
And so you know that, right? You have that ahead of time.
mm.
Everything you do is around that time. But you imagine you said, hey, coach, at 9:45, I'm going to get a haircut. It's
That
not going
doesn't
to
work.
fly.
No.
So maybe that is another thing that could be brought to a company. It's like, hey, look, I'm not asking you to be in the office from, X time to Y, but we're going to be doing this session from this time to this time every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Mm,
This way people know that's what's expected of them, and then they can manage around that. So I think we need to do more of that. Be upfront, clear communication, have expectations, and manage the performance.
mm. Brian, such a nice closing. I'm gonna thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. You're a great guy. It really feels that you have this metrics, analytics, and performance in your heart, and at the same time, you're not too old school. No worries. S-
Thank you. Yeah, that this was a ton of fun and very thought provoking. And I'm going to leave here thinking about a lot of this and how I can bring this to my company as well. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and this was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.